have to say that the phrase or term self-care is such a widely used term and possibly even overused. Most people will think that self-care means just go take a bubble bath or get a massage. And I'm not saying that isn't part of self-care, but self-care is so much more. And it truly is really important that we learn how to cultivate self care in our lives. In this week's episode, with my guest, Holly Swenson, an author and advocate for self care, in order to just be a better human, but to also be the best parent that you can be. And Holly Swenson is in the house. And before we jump in and talk about so many different things, parenting, people pleasing, perfectionism, I'm going to first start with the quote. And the quote is, hopefully getting this right, by Dr. Shukras Dillon. I still may have botched it. I apologize. I'm so sorry. The quote is this: you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes every day. Unless you're too busy, then you should sit for an hour. And I love that because I've heard that before. And it just makes me crack up because it's so true, right? If we're saying we don't have the time, and oftentimes a people pleaser will not, even a perfectionist will quote unquote not have the time because they're so busy doing all the things, taking care of everyone else and trying to be busy. And it's those people that are overachievers, overdoers that need it more than anything. So I love that you shared that quote with us. And before we jump into our conversation, welcome, first of all. And then, secondly, just tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yes. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
You're
I'm
welcome.
delighted to be here. And before I start, I just want to say when you asked me to pick a quote, for me, I use quotes all the time in my writing. I have them in my book, I have them on my wellness blog. It's hard to pick a true favorite, but this show in particular, this one came to me instantly because I think, especially for perfectionists and people pleasers who don't make time for themselves, I think when you start having that narrative, you really need to pause and really tap into that space of giving yourself more grace and more time in your life to fill your own bucket. And
Yes.
with that, I will dive into my bio. So I am an award-winning author on the rise and really on a mission to bring more wellness, joy, and intention to parenting and beyond. And in addition to being an author, I am also a BSN RN, a wellness blogger, and the mother to four incredible sons who I lovingly refer to as my gurus because they are constantly teaching me on a daily basis and helping me to grow in ways that I wouldn't otherwise. And then I also like to add in that I'm a perpetual student of life
Mm.
because while I'm leading certain areas, I'm always open to learning and growing from other people. I think that's an important part of being human. So I like to add that in. And for me, writing my first book, Stop, Drop, Grow, and Glow, which launched last fall, was a deep calling in a way I could be of service to parents everywhere. So this really feels like a service-based book. And I wanted to provide a framework to help parents really start to step into more wellness and more wholeness and find more joy on the path of parenthood.
I love that. Congratulations, by the way, first and foremost, on your book. And secondly, to go back to the quote where we said people pleasers and perfectionists very rarely will take the time, 20 minutes is what the quote says for meditation. And I'll even say, honestly, for myself, I've been doing a lot of inner work and healing for decades. And I have created a really good self care plan. I do really aim to balance my body, my mind, and my spirit. And with all that, Holly, honestly, there are still days, and sometimes my meditations are like 15 minutes, 20. There still are days where I'll go into the old pattern of I don't have time. or I'll put it aside, even though I know it's the first part of my morning routine or it's a part of my daily habits. So I just want to put that out there for the people that are listening that struggle with perfectionistic tendencies, that it's not about all or nothing. Just because there are days that I sometimes don't hit the mark on doing my meditation all the time or whatever other daily habit I have, that I go into the place now, today, I used to, that I don't go into that place of, oh shit, I'm such a failure. Ah, man, I messed up. Now just forget it. I'm not going to do it at all. That all or nothing, black or white thinking is what the perfectionist can go into. So that's why maybe we can start there when we talk about the self-care and how it relates to people pleasers and perfectionists.
Yeah.
And as you said to me before, and I loved how you said it to me, when everything in their bodies are telling them otherwise, anything opposite of take care of me first. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think you point out, you make a good point in terms of there are days that you're not going to hit your mark. That's just the reality. I too I lean on meditation to help me find my own grounding and calm and reset. And I shoot for daily as well. But there are mornings where, okay, maybe you oversleep or you don't make the time for whatever reason. You've got your plate is full. I also would like to say though that meditation doesn't always have to be super formal. It can be like, okay, you know what? I didn't get my meditation this morning, or whenever you normally like to do it. Maybe you're sitting in line dropping your kid off to school and you're stuck in traffic or whatever, but you take 2 minutes with your eyes open. um,
Of course.
you know, but to take that minute to check in and just breathe and give yourself a moment of reset. So sometimes maybe you have the luxury of 15, 30, 45 minutes, but that might not happen every day. So you can still try to do these micro doses of resetting where you can fit it in. So I want to add that to what you said.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a beautiful point. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because not only if you can't do it in the morning and you do it later while you're in the grocery line or whatever, but also I have found for myself that meditation can be just checking in with myself and checking in with my body. Even if it's like I said to you today, I've been recording podcasts all day. And just after each recording, just check in, and are my shoulders tense? Is my body tight? Am I tense or am I relaxed? Just how am I feeling? Am I stressed? Am I overwhelmed? Am I in flow? Am I energetic? Just sometimes just checking in with ourselves, with our minds, our hearts, and our bodies can be meditation. And it doesn't have to be long. It's a simple, quick check-in,
that body scan,
a
but
body scan.
and the more you do it, the easier you're like, oh, wow, I'm out here. This is feeling a little tense, or just depending on what you have going on in your life. So I love that. I think it's a great way to quickly touch base with how you're feeling and how you're showing up.
But for
And
someone who's a people pleaser and a perfectionist, and if they're at the beginning and they're really struggling with those tendencies, even doing that is so off the radar. Or it's just foreign. Like I didn't know what I didn't know. Back then, I didn't even know that checking in with myself was something that I could be doing or should be doing.
yes. And what I have learned too, and I think you're right, I think there takes a level of self-awareness and willingness to grow. But I really believe self-care is the secret sauce in parenting, because
Mm.
if you want to truly thrive, you can't leave yourself out of the fact. You have to factor yourself in to the picture. If you're going 100% for everyone else all day and not penciling you in, you're going to burn out. You're going to just not feel as good as you could be if you were making time to tend to yourself. And I think the reality is that when you are taking care of yourself and making time to tend to your heart, it makes it a lot easier to joyfully care for others. It brings that element into the way you're showing up. And I don't know if you want me to go into ways to help your listeners
I
engage.
I think that would be great, but I want to first back up one step
Sure.
before we tell the listeners different ways to do it. So again, going back to what you shared with me, that people that really struggle with these tendencies, like everything in their being is saying, I cannot or I won't put other people ahead of myself. Or the perfectionist, I can't find the way to have grace and compassion for myself. I only know how to push and pedal to the metal, and I only know how to take care of my kids. I can only put my kids first. I can't put myself first. Or yes, I can only put my kids first, not myself first. And they're really struggling. What would you say first to them before we give them the how-tos?
Sure. I think it depends on how stuck somebody's feeling or how limited they are, where they're meeting themselves. And so I think sometimes having professional guidance can be helpful, whether it's with a therapist or a life coach or somebody to help you unstick those points that maybe feel so stuck and frozen because you've been living from that place for so long.
Mm,
That can be a powerful way to start activating it. Some people are able to maybe journal or start unpacking their stuff on their own just by thinking about it. Like I always talk about self awareness and doing some reflection of what have I done for myself this last year, this last week, or this past month, and really take time to look at, wow, I really haven't done anything for myself.
mm.
So I think you have to wake up in your own life and be willing to be a participant in your own self care.
I would agree. What about you and your story? What was it like for you? Did you struggle at one point?
Sure. We have 4 kids. We started out with a bang. We started with twins, and then our third came just 12 months later. So we were like just slammed into parenthood in a really awesome way, but it was really busy. And so for me, I felt like we were trying to swim and keep everyone happy, healthy, and thriving. And I think in that intensity, I've always been health minded and I was pretty good about getting out for exercise. But I truly was about 7 years in before I started to activate wellness on a deeper, more intentional level. And I actually went away I told my husband, I said, I need to get away for a weekend. I just was so maxed out. I had had some personal stuff happen that year and I had lost my stepmother. And so for me, that was really a turning point. I went to this wellness retreat and I just came home a different person. And that's when I started including meditation into my life, practicing more gratitude and even inviting some of those wellness practices with my family and making that something that's available but not forced. So for my kids, they know they can join me, but it's on their terms. If they want to, they can, sort of thing. So for me, that's how it really started to unfold.
And would you say that prior to that experience of going to that wellness retreat, did you struggle with people pleasing and or perfectionism?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I'm a giver. I've always been
Mm,
a caregiver. Like that's just in my nature. That's how I've been since I was a child. So I think yes, to a certain extent. And in terms of perfectionism, I'm definitely more type A, I would say. But I really do strive for balance. And so I try to if I feel like I'm getting too far out of balance, like, oh, okay, I need to, tweak this to feel like I'm more in my own homeostasis. So I do try to have a good gauge on giving and taking and making sure it's feeling healthy.
yeah, I would agree. So maybe first, before we get to those how to's or what to do, those steps, maybe we can identify because I like what you just said that when you start to notice that you're out of balance, you start to make some tweaks so you can get back into homeostasis. How do you know for yourself that you're starting to go to get out of balance? If
Sure.
you
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think it's that feeling, like you said, you do the body scan, you feel tight, you feel tense. Maybe you're just feeling more stressed, or you're realizing all of the things that you've committed yourself to feels like more than you can really handle. And so I think sometimes it can be boundary setting. Maybe you're saying no
Mm,
to things that you need to. I think it's easy to I like to say yes and I want to take certain things on, but I have learned that in the balance of life, work, children, sometimes the best thing to say to outside asks is no, or I can't, I'm sorry, at this time I can't take that on. Because if you take too much on, you're going to feel the effects. So that's, I think, just a tip for other parents or people pleasers who maybe are prone to taking more than they should on.
yeah, I would agree because that's what happens to me is that I'll notice for myself, and I can still fall into the pattern when I'm pushing, like I keep pushing. I feel this pressure, this internal pressure system of do more, do more. I have to do more, get everything done, check it off, check it off, check it off. I love my list, but I can put so much on my list. And then if I'm at the end of the night when I'm watching TV, if I find myself going into the pantry and grabbing popcorn chips or peanuts, and then I go sit and watch TV, and then 10 minutes later, I'm back in the pantry for more peanuts,
Comfort food,
a little
right?
comfort food. And so that's a sure sign that I spent the day pushing and grinding. That's the thing for me as a recovering perfectionist, is to become really super aware of when I'm in the grind. If I feel like I'm grinding it out, that's when I know I need to pause. And it doesn't mean that I have to necessarily eradicate my responsibilities or wipe everything off of my calendar and go and do the opposite. And just like my background, for those who are listening and not viewing this, I have a virtual background of a beach and a palm tree. And so it doesn't mean I go to the opposite end and just hang out on the beach 24/7. What I find when I can strike that balance that you talked about is that I weave in and out. So I go into some work, I do a little bit of work, a little bit of grind, and then infuse it with, even if it's 5 minutes of just chilling, relaxing, body scanning, checking in, gratitude, focusing on the things that I love and enjoy about my life. And on the days when I don't have as much, then I really try to amp it up, that self care and that nurturing, so that for a day like today, when I have very little in between downtime, I said to you, I'm like, my body's relaxed. This is my fourth podcast interview of the day. I'm just chilling. My body's relaxed. I'm flowing. And it's because I build upon that practice. I cultivate that practice of self care so that when I get to the days when I have a lot, I can handle it with more ease and grace. Any
Yes.
thoughts on that?
Yeah,
And
no,
and as it relates to parenthood, because I know we're going to talk about parenting.
yeah, no, I think like what everything you're speaking to makes sense. And I think, for you have practiced that feeling in your body too. You know how to give that gift to yourself, which is
Yeah.
so amazing. And once you've unlocked that gift, it is the gift that will keep on giving if you let it. So
Mm.
I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I also think I just wanted to add, especially for people who are just starting out or maybe curious about this or who are like, I don't know, this sounds good, but I don't think I can really do this in my own life. Maybe try something small, like setting the tone in your own. Like for me, when I wake up in the morning, I have a routine that might be beneficial to others. It definitely helps me, but like I'll wake up and I like to put my tea on. So I'm a tea drinker, maybe it's your coffee or whatever you enjoy, but maybe put calm music on, aromatherapy
Mm.
if you like smells. Aromatherapy can be super powerful and calming just to help set that stage and set the tone for your day. So it can be very simple, small things, but then that stage has been set so that when my kids come down, they also are receiving a calm environment, just to try to help the day start off as smooth and as peaceful as possible. So that those are just a couple other things to maybe, consider for people who are just starting out.
Yeah, I love that. And simplicity and small steps is always helpful. And I like what you're saying too about creating that environment, because when my kids were younger and going to school, I can remember many days when it was just very chaotic and frazzled walking out the door, and hurry up and get this and eat your breakfast, get your books. And you don't want your kids to be going off in that state of mind. You know what I mean?
And some days are hectic. That's just how it
Yes.
goes. That's the reality. It's not every day
Yes.
perfect by any means. But if you can weave those little things into the morning just to help have an element of that calm, it does impact the way you feel and hopefully the way others in your family feel too.
Yeah, like I like that idea of music, having music on in the morning and just getting in the right energy and state of mind. So those are some good examples, small steps. We were going to talk earlier about the how-tos. Do you have other how-tos?
Yeah, I think when it comes to self-care, there's a ton of ways you can engage. And so that's going to look a little different and feel a little different to everybody, depending on what you like. You've got to be engaging with things that you like and that really fill your cup. Some of the things that I want to talk about and that I wrote about in my book, we've already mentioned meditation and be gratitude, just taking a minute to really connect with yourself. I just think the power of that. It's such a tremendous practice, and it's a practice that just keeps you growing and keeps you grounded. And so I'll mention that briefly because we've already really talked about that. I also talk about getting in the water. Water is really a tremendous element for grounding and releasing
Mm.
energy, as well as energizing your system. And so I really think there's an undeniable mind body healing that happens when you submerge in the water. And water is really calming. It can help keep your system more joyfully sustained. And I think with the intense workload of being a parent or being a perfectionist or a people pleaser, you're giving, having that element to come back to, whether it's taking a hot bath or getting in the pool or in the ocean. If you live near the ocean, water really can help you just have an instant reset and just help set you on a better path. And it's something that most people can access, even if it's a hot shower. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be fancy, but it helps bring you back to yourself. Humor. I
Mm.
think humor is definitely a way to give yourself more self-care. So even if it's finding humor with your friends or your family or watching a funny movie, I think humor can move mountains in your life, especially when you're dealing with situations that don't always feel funny as a parent or stressed out adult. There's a lot going on in life. And so I think it's important to include humor into the mix. I also want to mention the power of continuing to dream. Because you become a parent doesn't mean you have to stop dreaming. And I believe in this wholeheartedly. I think it's really important to encourage your children to dream, but it's also really important that you keep filling your own cup with things that bring you joy and things that you can look forward to, that anticipation, that the goal setting, doing things that keep you activated and inspired. It's going to make you a happier person.
I love that one. I don't disagree at all. I definitely do a lot of dreaming now that my kids are older, but I can remember when they were growing up, it's like that was the furthest thing. And again, I'm a recovering people pleaser. So losing myself in the role of mom and putting my kids' wants, needs, and desires first and making sure that their lives were quote unquote perfect was my main priority prior to me doing the work that I'm doing now. I don't could have seen it differently. Any thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the lens you use for your life. You're
Mm.
creating your own reality. And so I think if you allow yourself to dream, I think we're brought up to think, okay, I'm a mom, I'm a parent, I'm a father, I'm all of these things. And I think a lot of people get caught up in funneling all their energy just solely to their kids, which is awesome. It's amazing and it's important. But I also think it's actually healthier to keep some of that energy and some of that just for you. Because when you're giving, you end up running on empty, I think. And I really learned that. And for me, I still have 4 kids under my roof. We're very much still in the thick of parenting. And for me, writing this book and doing this work that I've really launched into doing, I think it's made me a better person because I'm not only trying to keep up with their schedule, but I'm also really caring for part of myself and pushing myself in this way to help other parents find more wellness and joy. And I think I feel more well-rounded is I think how I would explain that.
Yeah, and not only that, but your boys get the gift
Mhm.
of seeing that you are continuing to keep your dreams alive. You continue to not only just be a mom and be there for them, but you're also doing what lights you up and what makes you passionate, which is a great role modeling. It's a great role modeling for them. So that's huge. The gift that keeps giving. So I love that. Any other thoughts that you want to share or add about the parenting piece that we didn't cover yet?
Like I said, I think with self-care, it's endless. There's so much out there on ways to practice self-care. So I would just say do some exploration. Go with what feels good to you, but make time for it. And I just want to add, I think Self-care is not something that should be tended to like once a month or once every 6 months. This is something you should consider incorporating every day. Even if it's 5 minutes, it doesn't have to be long, but that's my spiel. From one parent to another, you have to take care of yourself, and it should be daily.
I agree. And I also think I'll add on one other piece to that part too, because self care is one of those terms out there that gets thrown around so much. And so often, I think people can attach to self care that it means take a bubble bath or go for a massage or go get your nails done. Now, it can mean that because when
Absolutely.
I go get a
Absolutely.
pedicure and they
It feels
put that, I
good.
know, right? And they put that massage chair on while I'm getting a pedicure, that feels good. And I do relax and I do shut my brain off for a little bit. So that can be self care. What I have learned also just for myself is that self care has also been this journey of learning how to have self compassion and grace for myself. Self care has been learning how to unmask or unhook from people pleasing and perfectionism. Self care has been learning how to set boundaries. Self care has been learning how to speak up and assert myself, to know that I matter, what I say, what I feel, what I believe matters. Like all of that is self care. And it
Absolutely.
is a part of me loving myself and accepting myself and having compassion for myself. I think that and again what you said is it can just be a little bit at a time. It doesn't mean you have to carve out an entire weekend to go away. It can mean that, but it doesn't just mean that.
That's right. Yeah, I think self-care is such a big term that it's really hard to even address everything that,
Well,
oh, absolutely. So yeah, I appreciate your add-ons for sure.
yeah, thank you so much. Fire questions.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I would be home with my family.
I love that. I think I would say the same. I love that. We were talking about self-care today. So what is your favorite way to take care of yourself?
For me, meditation and yoga are my favorites. Those are my go-tos. I do hot yoga, so I love to sweat. I love the detox feel I have when I come out of the studio. I don't know if you've done hot yoga, but
Yes.
those two are my absolute favorites. But I love self-care on a lot of levels. But if I had to pick like my top two, that's what I would say.
Love it. Name one book that changed your life.
My
Yours?
book is sitting right
Hold it
here.
up. Hold it up. Stop, drop. Let me just read that for the audience. Stop, drop, grow, and glow. Go get it, people.
Yeah, so this book has changed my life the most just because of what it's asked of me, what I've invested in it. But I love reading. I love all kinds of books, and I don't have a great one coming to mind, but I did just finish reading Lessons in Chemistry. I don't know if you've read that book, but if you're looking
No.
for a great read, really a fun book.
Awesome. I've not heard of that one, so I'll have to keep that in mind. And then last thing is, what is your favorite meal for breakfast?
I actually do raw cashews, blueberries, and mint. Sometimes but I'm usually a health nut. So those are probably my two go-tos the most, either fruits and nut or a green shake.
Love it. And then lastly, if someone is listening to this episode and they wanted to find you, where would they find you?
Sure. So my website is liveyourglow.live. And I'm also on Instagram. So you can find me at Holly Swenson _ live your glow. And if you're interested in my book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you buy your books. And it's also on Audible and anywhere you buy your audiobooks. So it's very available and really, I think, a really revolutionary book that will help you step into more alignment and wellness and joy.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
It was really good. So I really am grateful that you're here and for all of you for listening. And honestly, people, go and get Holly's book and just keep in mind what we were saying about the self care. Just take it small, little bite sized pieces, And if you have any comments, you have any questions, you want to know more, leave a comment. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to leave a review or a thumbs up. And I will see all of you next time on Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists.